Great to be here with you today. And for everyone listening, so Ross is a transformational coach. He helps men transform their physical bodies, their mindsets. And we have actually known each other for some time, but we ended up working together about a year ago. And Ross went on an incredible journey in his life, but I'll let him speak about that in a second. But Ross, great to be here with you, brother. Welcome.
Yo, thanks for having us. I'm buzzing to talk to everyone and share my story and show them my accent or what people normally sound like where we're from.
I know. So me and Ross are from the same place in the northeast of England. Ross is from Alnwick, and I was from a place called Ashington, which is about 20 minutes from each other. So we might need to put some subtitles on for this episode.
Brother. I will try to talk slower for sure. I'll do my best to spread the word.
Yeah. No saying words like yam. No saying bands.
Yeah.
No say where we're gonna gan. These are for anyone listening. So like in kind of where we're from in northeast England. So yem means home. Bands means
kids.
Yeah, bands means kids. Gannon means
good.
Going. Yeah. So there's this whole language that exists in the northeast of England, mainly due to the Vikings. So those words are actually all Norwegian. So if you go to Norway and say yam, they'll understand what you're saying. But you go anywhere else in the world that speaks English, they've got no idea.
That's it.
Yeah. So anyway, brother, begin. Share a little bit about where you were when you first reached out to us. What was happening in your kind of life, business relationship at that time?
So I originally got in touch with you in September of last year, so September 2021, but I'd actually followed Rick for a long time. Like you mentioned, we do kind of know each other from back in the day, so to speak. Mainly helping men through sort of natural bodybuilding and transformations, and because of Rick's previous life, as I like to call it, which he impressed us through in his own changes, I kind of followed his journey on social media. I went through a bad breakup. I was kind of in a bad situation in summer of last year. Really a series of errors on my part and sort of not living what I wanted in terms of my beliefs, in terms of where I was headed. And that culminated in the ending of my relationship at the time. And that really gave us the push to reach out and contact Rick. And it was probably one of the best things I ever done. Like, it was through something that was ultimately very, very bad or felt bad at the time. But now I literally couldn't be in a better place. I'm living exactly as I wanted, like beyond my wildest dreams. And that's not just saying that. Genuinely, I've went from wanting to travel the world, and I'm sure we're going to get onto that soon. I always wanted to do that. I always wanted to leave the UK. I'm talking to you now from Istanbul. I've not lived in the UK since last October. And I kind of reached out to Rick just before that journey, looking for some support and really to finally do something that I always said I was going to do. And the relationship ended, and I was like, fuck it, this is the push that I needed to actually do it and work on myself.
Yeah, it's been awesome to see your transformation in terms of how you've shown up in the world, how you've realigned with your values, how you have faced some internal fears. I know you came out of Costa Rica, which we can dive into a bit as well.
Yeah.
What has been the main changes that you've seen for anyone listening? Like, how are you feeling different inside? Because, and I think it's beautiful as well that you said that, you know, you were going through this challenging time and you've been able to transform it into what you have now. And I think that's deeply true. I think when we can actually go through those challenging experiences, you know, and go on our own hero's journey. I know you have your own story with that. I think there was a King Arthur story or something that you were sharing with me in the car when you're in Costa Rica. When we go into that space and we can transform our pain instead of just letting it fester, instead of letting those behaviors and habits manifest into something that just causes us more pain and causes other people more pain, when we actually go in and work on that, just like if you go to the gym, if you're out of shape and you don't go to the gym and you don't get in shape and you continue eating bad food and you continue not looking after your body, then it has an impact on your health, your energy, your relationships, your work. It touches everything, right? And it's the same with our inner work, our emotional world. So what have been the main changes that you've seen and experienced internally? And then how has that impacted how you're showing up in relationships, business, and life?
I feel, to go back to where I was last year in September, and in general throughout COVID, which I'm sure was a difficult time for everyone listening, that kind of affected my plans, And really I was unsettled, and I would describe how I was as like I was treading water. I was treading water both in my relationships, and I was kind of like non-committal. And I was having the same approach to my business, in that I'd kind of worked all of my 20s, or I had this vision and this dream of building my business to a point where I could travel the world, leaving and doing that. And I was on the cusp of leaving and making that jump, but I hadn't done it yet. And I was kind of waiting for everything to be perfect, or waiting for the right time. And because of that, I was kind of, and this was actually my question for ayahuasca when I went to Costa Rica, was I wasn't going all in. I felt like I was living kind of like 30 or 40%. But my problem was, and I'm sure a lot of the people listening can relate, is that it was very hard for me to explain that to my friends or other people, because on the surface of it, I had this life that maybe other people would aspire to or wanted to live, in terms of traveling, great business, built it myself, or friends. Generally speaking, I was still very happy as well as a person, I would say, albeit in my relationships, I was suffering. But I was just felt like I wasn't quite aligned. I didn't know what direction I was headed in. I'd kind of got to the top of a mountain, and I was kind of like a little bit lost as to where I was going next. And Rick and all of my work with him certainly changed that. And the best way I would describe it is now I kind of feel like I'm living more in line with my purpose, and I have a much better plan of the direction I'm headed in, not just for the next month, the next 6 months with my traveling, but the next 10 years and beyond, and my values with that. And I feel like I'm much more confident and happy in saying what those values are, which I never had before.
How does it feel to be in alignment with those values now? And how does it feel to know that you have, well, we actually mapped out the next 20 or 30 years, didn't we?
We did. We've done a lot of planning.
How does it feel internally to have that sense of direction, because you're connected internally, right? Like you've reconnected to yourself at a deeper level. How does it feel to be in that space?
Just a much greater sense of fulfillment, just kind of knowing what I want and why, and what the goal is, and what the purpose of what I'm doing every day. I felt like I'd got to a point where I'd achieved the goals that I wanted for my 20s. But one of the biggest things you said to us, which sticks with us, and I still say this to myself most days, is that I needed to create a more compelling future. I was in a position where I'd kind of got comfortable, and I wasn't ready for commitment in my relationships. And I also wasn't fully committing to the business, because I was kind of waiting on the next best thing, or waiting for the inspiration to hit us, as opposed to going out and planning it myself. It was like, it was almost, maybe it's because of my background, coming back to it, being through the northeast of England or whatever it is, because of that, maybe I don't know if I felt like I didn't deserve more, I shouldn't be planning more. I felt like I already had this great life, but I also had this kind of sense of like, is this it? Like I didn't really know where I was headed next, and I had no plan. So I think what happens then for a lot of men, a lot of lads even that I work with, happens with people's physiques, is that when you get comfortable, you just start creating a little bit more chaos. You start maybe just, whether it's cheating on your diet, drinking a little bit more weekends, maybe stop doing the things that you're originally doing in your relationship that made it good, and you just become complacent, and that creeps up on you, and you're not really living sort of true to yourself or those around you. And that was where I was at, versus now I'm buzzing. I'm really happy. I'm a happy, enthusiastic person anyway, but I think the difference now is that to explain to everyone, I've always considered myself a happy person anyway. I wouldn't say that's been the change. It's that I have a much more direction now, and a direction on a deeper level. And it's like I went deeper so I can go further than I ever thought. Like I have much more clarity on what it is I want in the long run, why I want it. And I've kind of I'm sure we're going to talk ayahuasca, but I kind of like went into the depths of myself to discover maybe what was holding us back, what I need to let go of to find out that, and to move forward.
It's been incredible, brother. Tell me a little bit. So jump in there. Why did you? What was your intention, both with the coaching and also coming out to Costa Rica to drink ayahuasca with the Colombian family? What was behind that? What was what was it like to have both of those pieces linking together, like having the coaching and internal support, and then coming out to Costa Rica and then getting the time to integrate? Can you talk through that experience?
I mean, for me, that was what sealed the deal. Like I really wanted to work with you, but I knew that having that sort of tangible experience, that memory, that like, this is what I done, this is what I have to show for it. When I seen that was an option, that was me straight away. I liken it in my world to people that work with me. It's like working with a coach to get in shape. But if you never have a before and after photo, how do you know how far you've come? Like, how can you, like, everyone loves showing someone like, this is how much weight I've lost, this is how I've changed my physique, or whatever it is. And that for me was that moment. That was the thing of getting on the plane, going out to Costa Rica, having some time on my own there, doing the diet, prepping for the ayahuasca, something that I'd always been interested in. But then sharing that journey with you was really like the crowning moment for me anyway. It certainly was something, and it's something that I want to do again in the future. I hope me and you do it again together. But it was really incredible. I think that was something that really set the coaching apart for me personally.
Mm-hmm. And can you share a little bit about that experience? Like, what was it like to come to Costa Rica? What was your medicine experience like, and how did you change and integrate that post ceremony?
Yeah, to give everyone a bit of context, you came to answer the question before a little bit better as well. When you talked about my intention with working with you and in general with ayahuasca, I'd already had worked with several coaches for my business, and I'd been very interested in self-development, but I'd never went as deep on my emotional intelligence. And then what flagged that up to us, as I mentioned before, was my previous relationship, and then looking at other areas of my life and in general my emotional intelligence and thinking like, this is a common theme here. Like, I'm the common denominator. Maybe actually I do need to at least look into this and consider maybe that the other person was right. Maybe that there is some things that I could be better on. And I thought this is a chance for us to do something completely different and work with a coach who, from my point of view, had come from a similar background, or at least a similar area to me. And I'd seen your journey from the bodybuilding world, if you like, into what you're doing now. And I thought, like, fucking hell, that's incredible. He's completely changed. And every post, or a lot of posts you're doing, I could really relate to. So my intention was right, I want to work on that side of myself, of my life, in terms of my emotional intelligence, and my empathy specifically was something I felt like could improve a lot. And yeah, that led with Costa Rica and ayahuasca, which was incredible. Like, meeting the lads who were, well, the Taitas who were giving with the ceremony. It was just me, Rick, and the two Taitas. It was incredible, really private ceremony in the jungle in Costa Rica. I feel very, very lucky to have been my first time, because I feel like that probably isn't everyone's first time. And we've done 2 days, a 2-day ceremony. And I think the ceremonial part of it for me was really important. I think in my business and in my life, I like to think that my attention to detail and sort of that is a speciality of mine, or like my really that sort of stuff. And I love that this experience was so just professional, but you could tell the lad that the Titans had real love for what they were doing and real passion. And then that made me feel a lot more secure and a lot more safe to relax. And it made the overall experience like incredible, a lot better.
Can we talk a bit about your experience, like what it was like to go through that, maybe the challenge that you don't have to speak specifically unless you want to, but for anyone who's thinking about coming out to an experience like that, it's not all rainbows and sunshines, right? There is genuine challenge when you have to confront your soul and confront your fears. And the beauty is that we get to come out the other side. And, you also had, the full support of everyone. Like everyone was there just for you. There was we had Bruce who was helping.
Yes.
We had the two Tigers and myself. Literally everyone was there for you.
And that was incredible. I think that made a big difference. And also because I'd done so much work with you before, I think we had that experience was around about the midpoint, or sort of within the first, maybe after the first third of our coaching journey together. So it felt like I knew and trusted you enough to kind of let go a little bit more. It was tough. Like, I would describe it as, I felt, particularly on the second night, like I went through the full cycle of life. Like, I experienced every emotion, I had every feeling. It was crazy. The first night was more, I actually probably learned more from the first night. The first night, I think, showed me what I needed to work on. You set an intention. So my intention was to let go and go all in. And for me, what that meant was like I said before, in my business, in my relationships, my question, something that Rick helped us identify, was I was always asking myself, is this the best I can do? And kind of comparing, and as I say, comparisons with FIFA Joy, I was always looking at, is this the best I've ever done? Is this the best I can do moving forward? But if you're doing that, you're never truly present. You're always kind of thinking forward or looking backwards and saying like, oh, how can I make this moment better? What I really wanted was to just accept where I was at in every situation and instead think, how can I just go all in on this moment right now? And maybe that doesn't make sense in terms of how ayahuasca can help with that. But I think for me, it helped us go back through some stuff in my past that I hadn't really fully let go of and grieved for. And I even cried on the Friday. It was an amazing experience. And at the time, you don't necessarily know how it helps you, but the plant, as they say, knows, or the mother knows, and kind of shows you what you need to see. The first night, I done a lot of learning in that regard. And then the second night, I went mega hard and had like 3 cups. I was pretty far gone on the second night. But again, that was because I wanted to really test myself. And I thought, right, I've learned a lot on the first night. I've kind of took some lessons. I've seen some things from a different point of view. To say that it shows you things from a feminine perspective or feminine energy, to say it can be. And I felt like I seen or felt some emotions from some women that had been in my life and how they'd maybe seen things that I hadn't seen before and had more empathy for them in the situation. And also for myself, to maybe grieve from some past relationships, particularly the longest relationship that I had with my girlfriend of 7 or 8 years. And I hadn't really grieved for that in the past. And I felt like that was then holding us back in further relationships and in myself. And also for her as well, like to sort of reset or reconnect or repair with her and leave it in a better position than it was, which was really important to me. That was the first night. And then the second night, I thought, right, I've learned, I've kind of seen some things. How can I go deeper? And I had an extra cup, and that was pretty insane. It was I certainly let go and went all in at that point. It was cool.
Beautiful. And then since letting go of everything you were holding on to through that experience and through everything we've been doing in the coaching, as you said, it might not have made sense in that moment, right? But how is that mapped out over the last few months? How has that began to integrate into your life, having created repair and resolution and let go of things? How has that allowed you to move forward in your life, your business, and your relationship?
Well, initially, like Rick said, that I didn't initially kind of understand. It gave us mixed signals. I wasn't sure how I was meant to apply the lesson. And they say that the integration, the period after, is 50% of the journey, and that you need to take that time and kind of keep working on yourself, keep practicing parts of your diet, meditating, journaling, all these things that we know are good for it. Keep doing that, and the lesson will come to you over time. And I felt like I didn't really get that lesson until maybe June, July time. I feel like it had settled in properly, which was coming up to nearly 6 months after the initial experience. Since then, I've felt a lot more, a lot more ready for commitment in terms of my business, in terms of my relationships. I feel like I'm probably for the first time in my life to really seriously commit to both of those areas. In the past, I've maybe been doing it because I thought it was what I was going to be doing. Maybe it's because I was happy at the time, but a real deeper sense and understanding of what I want and what I want to move forward. And I didn't have that before. So it's given us a lot more security, a lot more confidence, and a lot more connection to my own purpose, so that I can like act a lot more confidently with everything that I'm doing.
Can you share a little bit about that vision? Because I know you shared it with me in terms of how that had shifted, which it didn't, when we started, it didn't even exist. And now you have a different vision for life, for things that you want inside of your relationship, and where you want to live and all of these types of things. Could you share with me a little bit about how that vision shifted for you? Because I remember you sharing the last time we spoke that literally you couldn't believe that you were even saying that you wanted these things in your life.
Yeah, I think a lot of women maybe assume or hope or believe that you're going to get married or you're going to have kids, but I was never really openly saying it, and certainly not actively trying to bring it into my life. And also maybe accepting that was what I wanted. Like, I kind of thought it was something I would want down the line. But one really useful exercise we done was, I think it was were human emotions or the human needs, so the six needs, and looking at where I was in terms of alignment with those, what I valued, and then really seeing that actually where I wanted to be in 5 years or in 10 years or 15 or 20 years or my overall goals for life, how did that relate back to what I thought I wanted now and how I needed to change? And that really, if I wanted to have a loving, thriving, committed relationship, I would have to, I wanted to value that. But then when I looked at what I was doing, I wasn't acting that out right now. And I think my values started to shift and change. And I realized actually what I really want down the line is a relationship, is having a family home, living in certain places, and really, like I mentioned earlier, painting a much more compelling future for myself, so that instead of looking at maybe what I was missing out on by committing, I was looking at what I would be missing out on if I didn't. In that, I would miss out on the relationship that I wanted. I would miss out on getting married, the kids, all of these things if I didn't commit, and reframing it and realizing that that was what I truly valued. If that makes sense, hopefully. In terms of the specifics, which again, this was an exercise I think everyone could do in terms of mapping out my next 5 years, my next 10 years, was writing that down in a lot of detail. Was one of the first things I'd done with Rick, and I'd never really done it before. Like I said, all of my 20s were about building a business and building myself up to a point where I could leave and travel at the drop of a hat and go from, like I'm in Istanbul now, go to Barcelona, go to Athens, go to anywhere in the world and have a business that sustained that and allowed us to work from anywhere and travel. But the problem was I didn't have anything planned past that, and I'd got to that point, and then all of a sudden I was like, what do I want next? And that was why I think I felt lost, and also why I wasn't ready to commit in all my relationships, because I hadn't really actually been confident enough or done the work, so to say, to identify, oh, this is what I do want. So then now I know, like, I want to have 2 kids, maybe more, see what happens. I want to have a committed relationship. I want to be doing that by the time I'm 35, maybe. It's not to put a deadline on it, but looking at my life and saying, right, well, I'm 30 now, where am I at? How can I build a relationship that I actually really want? What do I want moving forward in terms of living places? Saying I'd like an apartment in Barcelona, I'd like to live there, have a penthouse there. I want to travel the world, but ultimately that's where I feel like I want to settle down right now. And really going into detail on those things and thinking, right, if I want all of that, I need to up level, I need to work on my life so that I have not just the funds and the financial ability to do those things, but be in a position emotionally to be able to have them. Like, if I'm not doing the work on myself in terms of my empathy and in terms of my emotional intelligence, I'm not going to attract the woman that I want to be able to do those things with. And that's where I was in the past. So that was the big game changer for me, was realizing how all of these things, and again, Rick gives you tons of great quotes, not to blow smoke up his arse, but he does say all these things. And it's true, and you'll have heard other people say it as well, but how you do one thing or one area of your life affects everything. And it was very true in that I wasn't committed in my relationships and I wasn't working on those areas. And then it was reflecting in the business, because I felt like I wasn't playing all out, going all in, letting go of the outcome and going 100% regardless, however you want to put it. I wasn't doing that. And it was then coming up multiple times and across multiple themes. But by really writing down and visualizing and doing the work with Rick on the future in terms of where do I want to live, what does it want to look like, how are my relationships, and really getting into the details as much as I could and making a real vivid picture, all of a sudden, like I mentioned at the beginning, I have this purpose and this desire and this commitment to a plan that I didn't have before. And that's the big difference.
And it's not just intellectual either, is it, Ross? Like, you can, when you're sharing that, like, I can feel it in your body. Like, what made that shift? Like, because it doesn't feel like it's just up here. It feels like you're in it and you're living it and you're acting it out.
Yeah.
What shifted that for you?
I think a combination of things, the meditation, the somatic stuff that you taught us, the somatic stuff, you do a better job of explaining that than me, but the techniques that you use and that you teach is through those and practicing them and committing to that process, for sure. By the way, I'm not perfect. for anyone listening to this who thinks like, oh, well, he went on this amazing journey and I bet you he meditated every day and he journaled and he turned up to every call with Rick and he had no ups and downs. There was still ups and downs in the process, and there still will be now. I'm not like journaling every single day as soon as I wake up. I'd like to, but I'm like, I'm working on it the whole time. But it's like all of a sudden I have that inner compass and that feeling of the direction I want to be headed in, and I realize the habits and the beliefs that I have, if I work on them, will direct us to where I ultimately want to go. And I'm relaxed in the process. I have like, I've read it on my notes before for something that we talked about. I have high intention but low attachment. I know what way I want to go. I know what I'm aiming for, but I'm also flexible in the way that I'm going to get there and the tools that I use. I'm kind of based, particularly at the minute, I'm moving around a lot based on the country I'm in. I'm not beating myself up too much if the time zone changes or work schedule works different in each place, but I'm trying to do the habits and the routine that get us there. And I think that repetition on the daily, circling back to what you said at the beginning, is what led us to the biggest change. Because before, I'm sure everyone's heard about like, you should meditate, you should read, you should journal, you should do these things, you should practice X, Y, or Z. But if you're just doing it for its sake and you don't really understand why, or you haven't got a purpose, then what result are you going to get from it? Whereas all of a sudden I had an intention for all of those practices and I could feel the change slowly happening. And then alongside that, I also had several milestones and catalysts in terms of I left the UK and moved to Barcelona. I then went to Argentina completely on my own, didn't know a single person, like flew there on my own because I wanted to have that experience, that hero's journey as we talk about, of making myself even more uncomfortable. Could only speak very bad Spanish. It's better than my English, but when I went there and done that, and then we had the ayahuasca experience, and then I left and went on another journey of travel. So I had all these things along the way, alongside my inner work, that kind of like, maybe some people can relate. I needed both. I needed the actual physical outer world experience as well as doing the inner work at the same time. So I had like key moments and milestones that I could almost pin the change to, or really like have points of no return along the way. Yeah.
Speaking of heroes' journeys, can you share the King Arthur story and the synchronicity of how that all happened at the same time?
Yeah. So one of my favorite videos of all time, and this is a really niche thing, so people probably listening thinking, irrelevant, but I'll tell you anyway. Joe Rogan podcast, very, very old episode, but Joe Rogan and Guy Ritchie, and they talk about the hero's journey, or they actually talk about King Arthur, the prodigal son. It's in this is like a 16-minute clip on YouTube. I think you can search it, Joe Rogan, Guy Ritchie. And I'd found this video like 5 or 6 years ago, maybe even more. And this was like hearing someone put into words something that I couldn't explain. And Guy Ritchie tells the story of King Arthur and of the prodigal son. He talks about basically the story of the prodigal son. The king gives the two sons, the inheritance. They go away. One of them spends all the money. I'm going to give you the very quick version here. One of them spends all the money. One son stays with the king, who's like the wise son. The wasteful son, as they say, goes away, spends all the money. In the video, Guy Ritchie describes it as he's sniffing coke off strippers' tits. He's having the best time ever, but eventually he kind of feels a bit shit about himself and he realizes that he spent all this money and he doesn't know what he's doing or where he is. Somehow, out of nowhere, he ends up reconnecting with the father. He invites him home. The father kills the sacrificial pig, all this, to celebrate this wasteful son coming back. And the sensible son complains to the father and says, why are you celebrating his return? He left, he spent his inheritance. And the point of the story is, as Guy Ritchie says, and it blew my mind at the time, is that you are all three people. You are the father. Your sensible son is your intellect. Your wasteful son is your sense of adventure, which was what I was chasing when I left and what I'd always wanted. And that ultimately you have to leave yourself and lose yourself to understand the value of yourself. And that was this journey that I was going on, and I couldn't put it into words. And I heard this video like 5-6 years ago, and I was like, this is fucking incredible. This is me. And the point is that your sensible self or your intellect will never understand the value of the journey. So when you explain something like ayahuasca or some of these things to people who maybe is on into that world or that sense of self-development, and they just don't understand. Your intellect sometimes doesn't understand the importance of the journey. And you come back and you realize that you are enough, and that's it. So it's an incredible story in itself. But I heard I heard this originally 5, 6, might even been 7 years ago. I have it saved on my YouTube account. I listen to it. I sometimes listen to it when I go to bed. I love it, right? It's my favorite story. So this is going to blow everyone's minds because you're probably thinking, what relevance does this have? But let me tell you, it gets better. So then I'm in Costa Rica. I've went on this journey. I've been working with Rick, something I'd wanted to do for a long time. I'm now at what is a massive milestone, a massive event in that process, in that I'm in Costa Rica. I'm preparing for the ayahuasca. I'm doing the diet. I'm actually training. It was in the lead up. I think it was the Tuesday. I was meeting Rick on the Thursday. I was training mega hard and I was going in the sauna a lot. I was running, I was training, I was preparing my body and my mind, meditating for the ayahuasca experience. So I'm in the sauna. This is not just like I remember very specifically. I'm in the sauna at my hotel in the days before. I'm preparing, and I've got the latest Joe Rogan podcast on at the time, which is Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson. And I'm listening to that in the sauna. And out of nowhere, this is a 4-hour long podcast, by the way. So I could have listened to any of it any time. It had only come out that week. So again, the synchronicity here. And I'm in the sauna. And on that episode, that week, when I'm going on my hero's journey, if you like, and going to slay the dragon, or however you want to put it, Jordan Peterson starts talking to Joe Rogan about Guy Ritchie and about that episode and that story of King Arthur and of Guy Ritchie and this whole thing about slaying the dragon and the prodigal son and all this stuff. And it's literally in the days. This is an episode that's 5, 6, 7 years old, however old it is, doesn't matter. And then that week they release a new episode and they're talking about it, a completely different person, as I'm in Costa Rica on my way to go meet Rick. And I was just like, life's a simulation, and I was like, what is going on here? Yeah. It literally, and that is a long story, but I mean, I can honestly can't tell you enough. Like, it felt like a sign from the universe, I'm gonna put it, but it just felt like a surreal experience. I was literally just like, what is going on here? Like, it was, you can tell that it was incredible. And that story meant a lot to me, and it kind of summarized what I felt like I was doing, and I felt like no one else really understood until I spoke to Rick. This kind of urge that I had, or the need that I had to leave or create my own chaos, or to kind of go on this journey on my own and challenge myself and not have anything and have these new experiences and kind of strip myself back and see who I am, to then ultimately return to myself happier with the information to share with the tribe, as they say, in the hero's journey. And that was a little bit of an insight into mine.
Beautiful. And I think listening to that story for anyone who is going on a journey, whether it be through coaching in your life, if you're thinking of going on an ayahuasca journey, that story in itself is really helpful, because the mind, even when you're listening to Ross's story there, might have doubts about, like, well, how does that work and all of these types of things. The mind cannot understand what is beyond itself. There are so many forces at play that are literally making the reality that we are all experiencing. Our heart is beating without any of our conscious attention. There is an intelligence to this whole life and experience that is beyond intellectual comprehension. And when we go on these experiences, we get beyond the intellectual mind and we get to meet our souls and spirit and, you know, things that are beyond our regular comprehension. And you can only experience those when you're willing to go on such a journey, and you come back more whole than you left. You come back with more of your soul, with more connection to life and the archetypical nature of reality itself, which we see in myth, which we see in stories. So when we hear that story, even as you retell that story, Ross, and I've heard it many, many times, every time you say it, it evokes something within myself. I feel excited. You reignite the archetypical nature within myself. And I remember that there was more to life than this kind of mundane moment-to-moment reality. And I think that's the beauty of going on such an experience. And you tell that story freaking beautifully. You speak about coming back on the hero's journey, and you get to share that with other people. Before we close up, what has it been like to go back and share that with other people, with your friends, with your family? And have they reflected and seen your changes, and what have they shared back to you?
Yeah, a lot of people have told us that I'm like a different person in a positive way. I feel like I'll liken it to this because this is more of a beginner or more of a basic, and maybe it's an easier way for people to relate. I always remember when I first started meditating that I was worried that I would lose my passion, or worried that I'll become a little bit of a walkover. And then you start meditating and you realize that actually it just lets you decide more you're not reactive. You get to choose your decisions. It gives you space between. And ayahuasca in that journey was like that, but on another level. It made us even more in tune and even more happy and even more belief in myself, to the point where it was like I could just have more empathy for other people's point of view, a lot more relaxed. My mom, who I'm very close to, my mom brought us up. She would always kind of laugh and be like, "Oh, you wouldn't have done that before ayahuasca." And a good example of this for everyone in terms of my reactions to stuff, and Rick certainly knows about this, is that I left several different journeys along the way since I left the UK, but one of the biggest ones was to go to South America again, although Central America for Costa Rica, but to go again, to go around South America in more detail. And I went to Peru. And when I landed in Peru, I lost my suitcase. And I didn't have my suitcase for 35 days. And at the time, they said that my suitcase was completely lost and that I just wasn't getting it back. And honestly, I really wasn't bothered. Like I'd done so much, and that is such a crazy example to use. And people may say, well, how does that? I was just so much in the present moment, and I'd learned so much over the past few months that I realized that, yes, I want to get the suitcase back and I want to do everything I can to do so. But I want to also not lose the present moment through anger or through frustration or through hoping that like I'll be happy when I get the suitcase. And that was all through the work that I've done with Rick, through ayahuasca, through this journey that I've been on. And that's just one small example, but it's a really easy one to tell. I lost my suitcase, and genuinely, my mom, bless her, in the UK, was going absolutely crazy, and she was ringing every airline and trying to find it for us. And she was actually annoyed at how relaxed I was. And that was honestly because my point of view was, well, the suitcase is gone. I'm not getting it back anytime soon. I don't want to lose myself as well. I don't want to lose today as well as the clothes that I've lost. I don't want to lose more of this experience that I look forward to for several months and I had in my diary, and I wanted to enjoy South America and enjoy meeting these new people and enjoy going to Machu Picchu and this incredible journey. What's the point? They're just clothes, they're just material things. And going back, and I wrote this in my journal when I did remember a journal at that time, going back to that Guy Ritchie and Joe Rogan video, one of the things they say is that to find yourself, you have to lose everything, and everything that you have is just, it's immaterial, it's not yours anyway. Like it comes and goes. And that was like another real test. I felt like, tying in the ayahuasca stuff and everything I've done with Rick, since and even moving forward, I know that I'll have more tests along the way. And some I'll pass and some I'll stumble. But that was one real test quite soon after, to say, okay, like you said, you've worked on yourself, you said you've got empathy, you've been on this journey, you've lost all your stuff. What are you going to do? Like, how do you feel about that? How's your sense of self now? Do you need these crutches? Do you need a certain t-shirt or a certain pair of trainers or a certain, whatever to feel comfortable? Like all of these things that ultimately is just society or myself putting on myself these pressures to make ourselves feel better. I had none of them all of a sudden. And I was in this situation where I was meeting all these new people. And what I realized was actually, I am enough in myself. Which was the whole point of the story with Guy Ritchie and Joe Rogan, the whole point of my work with Rick, of the ayahuasca journey. And it kind of all tied in. I was like, fucking hell, I've changed a lot here. So that was the kind of icing on the cake. And it's a great one for everyone to relate to, because I'm sure you can imagine how you would feel. But genuinely, I still had the best time. Didn't affect us at all. And the best part of it was like I passed the test. And then 5 weeks later, I was in Colombia and someone rang us from the airport and I had my suitcase and I got my stuff back. And then I was even more grateful when I finally got it.
Icing on the cake. And that right there is the king within. The idea is like, as long as we need something on the external to validate ourselves, like if you need the crown to be a king, you're not a real king. If you need the money, the success, the fame in order to actually feel validated, you're a weak person, because all of those things are temporary and they will come and go. If you get famous, you become a great basketball player or singer or athlete or business person, your time will come and go. No matter what happens, like life will go through its cycles. And if our sense of self-worth is put onto something externally, we're super wobbly. Whereas when we internalize our strength and power, that is King Arthur. It's the king within. It is the father and the two sons. We are all that within. And when we can internalize our power like that, when we can internalize who we are and derive our sense of self internally, then we can actually be more present with life and show up in the fullness and wholeness of ourselves, of which you did, which is incredible. And I think that's a beautiful metaphor and lived story that explains that so well. So thank you for sharing that, brother. What would be some final words for anyone who is listening to this, who is thinking of going on inner journey, who's thinking of picking up that sword? What would be some kind of words of advice for anyone to finish on that you would share with them?
Rick's your man for sure. Yeah, get Rick's help. I always think it's, we're both coaches. I think we all know deep down, if you had to give yourself advice of how you would have the best journey, how you would find the best path, I think having someone guide you, someone who has experience of it, makes a big difference. And just trusting the process. These signs that we get along the way are meant to guide you, whether it's relating to a piece of content, whether it's feeling like you should apply, whether it's feeling like, you should reach out or ask a question or engage. It's through doing those things and, going back to my intention of just letting go and going all in. What would you do if you weren't afraid? It's a great question. What would you do if you weren't afraid? And just do that. And it always works out. I always think in the end, if you're a good person, you listen to this, I'm sure you are. If you're a good person and you act with good intentions, I'm sure that eventually things come around. And I do truly believe that. So just go for it.
Beautiful, Ross. And for anyone listening, and honestly, if you're thinking of going on a physical journey, I thoroughly recommend checking out Ross's work as well. He has transformed not only his own physique naturally, but literally hundreds and hundreds of men now. His methods and both his energy and his charisma and just his care for his clients and life, like if you can feel his energy in this, that's what he puts into everything. Like every single session, everything he does, the way he shows up for ayahuasca, the way he shows up for his friends, the way he shows up for his family, everything. This is how Ross shows up. It's like, honestly, brother, like how you show up in life is I think is remarkable. It's incredible. But where can people find you if they want to go on an inner journey, if they want to go on an outer journey and they want to transform their physical physique? Where can people find you?
Thank you. I appreciate that, first of all, coming from you. Well, I think what I do in a roundabout way can actually be something that builds your confidence to go on a deeper journey and an inner journey in the long run. I feel like the transformations that I give men is through the vehicle of physique transformation, and it all overflows into other areas of your life. So, it's through getting in shape that you then maybe is more willing to have a conversation at work, or maybe it's to ask the girl out or approach someone in the bar or whatever it is. I feel like your physical health is one foundation or one pillar of your life that working on supports everything else. Like I said before, working with Rick's helped us with my emotional intelligence, helped us in every way, to be honest, because they're all interlinked. And I particularly help men through the physical. You can find my business, Aesthetically Trained. You can find it online. That's quite a long word and hard to spell. So you can look at my t-shirt here if you look online. I'm sure Rick will put the information in the show notes, or you can search my name. So Aesthetically Trained, or you can search Ross McKenley. And McKenley is McKenley. And that's it.
Amazing. And there's an easier way as well. So obviously, if you're listening to this, you probably follow me. We're probably connected. You can just go on the people I'm following and just type in Ross and it'll pop up.
I'll be there. I'm one of the chosen few.
Ross, brother, thank you so much. We're going to be friends for life, brother, and looking forward to continuing the journey in our own ways. But yeah, brother, thank you for dropping in today. Thank you for sharing your wisdom, and thank you for everyone who's listening as well.
Thank you for everything. I really appreciate it. Cheers, Rick.
Take care, brother.